Good morning, everybody, or whatever time it is when you're looking at this. We're going to go now on with the subsection 9 of the fourth chapter in Orot HaTshuva, the Lights of Return. And Rav Kook began this particular section talking about the different ways in which the spirit of return will express itself in the Jewish people. And the way in which we're going to be discussing this issue now is the pain that we'll feel of the disgrace and insult that the great heritage that we received from our ancestors has been subjected to. I think I might have mentioned last time, if I think I mentioned Donald Trump, right? A tremendous fortune is bequeathed to you by your parents, and you insult it and disparage it. So what a terrible crime! What a terrible insult that is. So not to compare dollars and cents with the great spiritual heritage, but just to give you an analogy. So let's go on now. V'haruach hagadol mikoro mikor chaim. The source of the Torah, the traditions that we've received, it's from the very source of all life itself. Hamakor ha'eloki hayon. It comes from the divine, supernal source. Sheholech v'nimshach midor dor. And it's been drawn and continued throughout every generation. And if you look inside the Torah, if you look inside Yiddishkeit, Judaism, everything's there. Kol chemda v'kol tifara, all preciousness, all beauty. V'choshech hakafrani garam v'hitalesh mikeren ben shemen zeh. And the darkness of heresy has caused us to be disconnected from this incredibly rich source of nurturing, v'litot bistot zarim, and to err into the foreign fields, she'ein bahem lishad v'chaim badenu, those foreign fields that cannot give us any type of nourishment and life force. So Rav Filber, in his commentary on this particular line, says that when we think about what has happened to the Jewish people, there are two sources to feel heartbroken. I was mentioning to my father last night there's such an interest in the world out there in Judaism among non-Jews. And Jews, everybody seems to want to be Jewish except for Jews. I mean, in a weird way, they don't always define it in the sense of I want to be Jewish. But if you sort of tease beneath the surface of even the claims of Christianity and Islam, in many ways, that those two religions are in fact a kind of desire to connect to to God's voice to Abraham. They're, people called the Abrahamic religions, right? And today you have these, I sent out yesterday, I don't know how many of you had a chance to see it, this tribe in Uganda that my son-in-law happens to have spent Shabbat with them last Shabbat. And my father was mentioning to me that I know personally, living in Israel, the people come from Burma that see themselves descendants of the lost tribes. We have in Alosh Food people that are coming from South America that don't claim to be from lost tribes, but have, in their search for truth, have attached themselves to Judaism. So there's this tremendous global thirst that sees somehow in the revelation from God to Abraham as somehow tying into ultimate truth. Everybody except for Jews. It's a terrible heartbreak. It's a terrible heartbreak, and that's what Rav Kook is saying, that the heartbreak itself is part of the teshuvah. But once we realize that it's right in front of our faces, right, that we have this incredible treasure. It's right in front of our face. We're just, we don't see it, and that heartbreak has two elements. Rav Filber points out. So there's a kind of a double aspect of this. It's based upon a pasuk in Yirmiyahu, in Jeremiah. So in Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu, in the second parak, he says the following: Ki shtaim raot asa ami. That my nation, God says, did two terrible things. Oti azavu makor mayim chamim. That they have abandoned me, the source of vital waters. Right? God says they've abandoned me. When a person is thirsty, imagine you're so thirsty, you're in the desert. You're thirsty. And fresh, amazing water, Perrier, is held in front of you, but you turn your back on it. Right? So that's one thing Hashem says. But then there's the pasuk goes on, Lachtzov lahem be'erot nishbarim asher lo yachilu hamayim. Not only did they do that, but they dug for themselves cisterns that are broken, that cannot contain water. So it's two things. One is to abandon this incredible life-giving source of sustenance, and to then try to create an alternative which can't contain water, right? So it's two tragedies. It'd be sort of bad enough to abandon something, but then the double insult is to then try to find that a substitute. Thank you. A substitute somewhere else, a substitute which is false and bankrupt, vacuous, right? And so that pasuk in Yirmiyahu is echoed in Rav Kook's language, where he says that the darkness of heresy caused us to do two things: to separate ourselves, abandon, right? And then to wander off errantly in these strange fields, right? That's the two aspects of the pasuk Yirmiyahu. So when we realize that, we have to feel so deeply pained. Hatzara gadol hazeh yiparetz ba'oz. And you know what's going to happen? This pain of realizing how we have committed these two terrible errors of abandoning the source of all life and trying to find a cheap substitute that is worthless, it's going to erupt forth in incredible strength, the pain over this. Vayilaveh elav koach sheyishuvadat u'metinut. And there'll be accompanied with it a kind of moderate and I need another word for moderate, measured, calm evaluation, right? There's two issues. When a person feels very upset over something that's happened, being upset is a very powerful and dangerous emotion. I was talking to somebody recently who attended a meeting. Things were said at the meeting that really upset them. And, the person told me they were like tempted to just storm out of the meeting in a storm, right? And that's understandable, right? And it's healthy. It's healthy to feel that that emotion of being appalled and in pain. But at the same time, Rav Kook says that when Mashiach comes, that we're going to be able to, when these lights of return express themselves, to take that brokenheartedness and that being upset, but then somehow channel it in a way which is wise and judicious. Now, what does he mean by this specifically? So listen to what he says. Ladat gam kein ma sheyesh lahaver mitoch kol darchei ha'te'iyah asher nichshadu bahem. To know how to take that which came from all these paths of wandering away from the Torah and see how to, in fact, incorporate it into a corrective path. You know, I think there's only one thing worse than making mistakes, and that is not to be able to reap the rewards of mistakes. That's what Rav Kook is saying. Right? That when we fall, so it's not enough just to get up. Right? We have to somehow not just return to getting up, but go higher as a result of the fall. The bad things that happen, which cause us pain, have to somehow propel us forward into a state which is even higher than existed before the fall. That's the whole idea of teshuvah, of return. That's why the Gemara says a very famous line in the Gemara, that in a place where balei teshuvah, those who have returned, stand, even a complete righteous person can't stand, because the person who's returned, that somehow can then use all of the mess that we fell into and use that as building blocks for greater insight. You know, I was talking to my wife. So, like everybody, you know, we all go through easier periods, more difficult periods. And, we were talking about a certain struggle. And, you know, I said to my wife, in spite of the fact that there's a lot of pain, that one thing I can say is it certainly helps humility. When a person has gone through difficult periods and heartbreak as a result of one's own mistakes, so the ability to empathize and to feel humility. And can you imagine, like a therapist, imagine such a thing? I think there's nothing more foundational in therapy than empathy. But can you imagine a therapist who's never struggled? I don't think there could be such a thing. As a matter of fact, and I'm sure that the therapist among us knows, that many people who are attracted to therapy as a profession are people who've gone through a lot of struggles. I'm not accusing anybody of anything specific here. I don't know. But so some people see that as a way to invalidate, like, how, only crazy people become therapists. So I think that's probably exaggeration. But the point is that only somebody who has truly struggled can offer an outstretched hand, because only that person can understand what it means to have a broken heart. Only someone who's had that broken heart. Empathy, right? So as Rav Kook is saying here, that when we wake up and realize how we as a nation have abandoned the source of living water, and not only that, but we tried to dig wells that cannot contain the water, to paraphrase the pasuk from Yirmiyahu, from Jeremiah, that we're going to experience a tremendous heartbreak and anger even, but it has to be coupled with one more thing, and that is to say, how can, let's say, in recent Jewish history, the past 200 years, of a wholesale abandonment of Torah. Really since the 18th century, the seeds of it, and stronger in the 19th century, and what happened in Western Europe and America, particularly, of wholesale abandonment of Jewish tradition. And as this winds of return, the spirit of return, starts to take on force, to somehow then see, well, how can we now look at the past 200 years of our history and not just reject, but to say that that painful experience itself becomes the basis, the fodder, the ingredients to be able to move forward, not to go back. That's why the word going back, tshuva, as a return, is a misnomer. We don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to the 17th century. That's why I sometimes object to some of the literature you find that's coming from certain Orthodox publishing that overly romanticizes the good old days. Before the winds of heresy, all the isms, right? Don't want to go back. Go forward. And all of the mistakes and all of the heartbreak that we should feel will become the lessons to be able to go forward, not to return to status quo, what was before, but to move forward. Let's go on. Chofesh HaKodesh HaPnimi Shebin Neshama Yetzei Mima'asaro U'Betzimon Az Yachel Kol Ruach Lish'ov V'Lishtot L'Revaya Me'oto Makor HaChaim HaElyon. And when we reach that, both the heartbreak and to be able to learn from those lessons, what's going to happen? That spirit of holiness, that internal feeling of holiness that's in the soul, is going to be liberated from imprisonment. That's what it feels like when we break away from those negative patterns. We're going to feel a tremendous liberation from the confinement of the mistakes that we made in the past, self-confinement, our self-imprisonment. We're going to feel free. And with a tremendous thirst, the spirit is going to become alive and to draw and to drink to satiation from the source of supernal life. Right? We're going to be released from bondage and be able to drink to satiation, the Rivah, from that source of eternal life. Okay, we'll pause here and we'll continue B'ezrat Hashem tomorrow.